You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauryn Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy to implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life. Virtual reality will become an established tool in the arsenal of healthcare professionals for pain relief, mental health, therapy, and many other important areas by the end of the decade. Josh Farkas. How's it going, Travis?
Great. I just got back from Colorado Springs. We went out there to see Fluffy last night.
How was it?
It was awesome. He's hilarious. And he went on and on and on forever. The show started at 8 o'clock and didn't end until 11:30.
That's a long show. Holy cow.
It was crazy. He just kept going.
That's a lot of laughs. Did
you
feel exhausted from all of the laughing that you did?
There was a point because I don't stay up till 11:30 where I was like, oh man, I can't leave because he's hilarious the whole time. But it was like, man, I'm kind of ready for bed.
Man, we're getting old.
I mean, I've been this old for a long time. I haven't successfully made it past 11 very often in like a decade.
My bedtime's 8:30 and I like it that way.
Well, we better get started. How's it going, Lauryn?
Well, it's going pretty good. I had a really good week with work. It was one of those weeks, I feel like that it just all like tends to happen at once, where like a lot of my kids just start meeting their milestones because you just like work on it for so long, and sometimes it doesn't feel like you're making a lot of progress. But then, man, I have those weeks where like I had kids who were crawling for the first time, kids who were cruising for the first time. And it was just like, I just got to be the cheerleader this week. It was really exciting. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good.
I feel for you. I know how that goes sometimes. Like you see people consistently and it's like, man, we're not making any changes. And then I go and do like a progress note and I retest and I look back at what they did in the beginning. It's like, I really was planning on discharging you because I thought we weren't doing anything, and here we're just making steady gains each week. So
it's really cool to like look and see the progress, I guess, especially with kids. I mean, like sometimes kids like make really quick progress, but I see kids for so long that like sometimes you're like, whoa, are we doing anything? And then all of a sudden you like look and you're like, oh, holy cow, look at all we've done.
Right. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. So what are we going to talk about today, Travis?
Well, I'm personally not a lover of all things technology. I usually try and get away from computers and the phone. But there's some really cool growing science literature around virtual reality. And I know you have some positive experiences, which we'll get into a little later in the episode. But I thought today we could do like a brief overview of just several of the things where we're really finding some very promising research for virtual reality in all sorts of things. And some of it is really shocking.
It's really exciting. Yeah. And a lot of this is like very new emerging science. So we don't have a ton, but there's definitely going to be a ton coming. I'm actually participating in like the beta testing of one right now, which again, we'll talk about later.
You're in all sorts of studies.
I don't know what it is. I like being in research.
I don't even know where you find to get in these, but I think it's very cool that you're doing it.
I think I end up being like really curious about things, and then I keep researching it, and it tends to be like new novel ideas, and then people are researching and are like, I need volunteers, and I'm like, oh, well, I want to do that, so sign me up.
Do you know what your susceptibility to like placebo is? Do you know if you're like a high?
I have no idea. I've never like tested that on myself.
I was just curious if you knew.
Like, how do you test that on yourself?
I don't know how to test it. I just know that a lot of people are I mean, there's a range. Like if you tell me that something's going to work, I'm going to have some level of belief or disbelief. in that thing,
Sure.
no matter what it is. And it all
Sure.
depends. Like if you tell me it's a medication, I'm probably gonna have less belief.
Yeah,
than
I
if
think
you
it
tell me,
depends on
I've
like
got
what
this
it
new
is.
exercise, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on what it is. For the thing that I was in, the thing that I'll talk about later, the virtual reality that I am kind of testing out, I was very skeptical. So it's
Cool.
actually like changed my mind a little bit.
So probably not a high placebo in
Right.
that specific study.
Not
at
for this
least.
one. Yeah, not for this one. I was actually genuinely surprised. So
Cool.
yeah.
We've got some other cool ones. I know you're very excited about this one with children in cerebral palsy. So
Yes.
I will children with cerebral palsy.
Yes.
I will let you go over that one.
Yeah, so there is a study that is basically testing strength and balance in children with cerebral palsy, and they were trying to see if virtual reality based rehabilitation therapy is effective with motivating children with CP. So the study investigated the effects of treadmill training with virtual reality on gait, balance, muscular strength, and gross motor function in children with cerebral palsy. They had 18 children with spastic CP that were randomly divided into the virtual reality treadmill training group and the just regular treadmill training group. So I'm assuming the virtual reality in this case is basically like really cool worlds that you're like walking through and use like just primarily as a motivator.
Okay.
Because it didn't really describe what it looked like, but that's what I'm guessing.
Gotcha.
So the groups performed their respective programs as well as conventional physical therapy 3 times a week for 8 weeks. They assessed muscle strength, gross motor function, balance, gait speed, and gait endurance. And after training, gait and balance had improved in the virtual reality treadmill training group compared to the regular treadmill training group, and muscular strength was significantly greater in the virtual reality treadmill training group compared to the treadmill training group. So it looks like this is a huge motivator for kids to work on a lot of these skills, or at least for treadmill training, to make some pretty cool improvements just compared to like walking on a treadmill.
That's awesome. And I know that there's all sorts of studies out there for virtual reality and strokes. So it totally makes sense that it would work with cerebral palsy if it's effective with strokes.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're not going to go into the stroke research because it's we're just going to gloss over some of the highlights, if you will.
Yeah.
And then we can go into further detail if people want, or if they send us questions about specific things in future episodes. So another thing is strength in elderly. This is where things like kind of blow my mind. For me, it doesn't seem like you should be able to improve strength with virtual reality. But this study, one study looked at hip muscle strength and balance control in 32 older adults, and the virtual reality group, which was doing all of their virtual reality based exercises unsupervised, showed significant improvements in hip muscle strength of the extensors, flexors, adductors, and abductors after 8 weeks. So that's pretty much gross hip strengthening. And your hips are very important for your balance. So it makes sense that your balance would probably improve too. That's usually what I'm working on with people, is combination of strength and balance, and they kind of feed off of each other. Another one for strength and balance in the elderly groups, again, looked at, they did a virtual reality training program for 60 minutes twice a week for 6 weeks versus a control group. And both the experimental and control groups had fall prevention education 3 times during the course of the study. The experimental group showed significant improvements not only in static and dynamic postural balance, but also lower extremity strength. So again, more strength, better balance. Static would be standing still. A lot of times you have people stand on one leg, or tandem stance. If you don't know what that is, it's one foot right in front of the other. Dynamic is you might be walking in tandem stance or just walking in general. Or one of my favorite tests to do with people is see how their balance reaction is and their ability to catch themselves. So I'll knock them off balance intentionally and see what happens, because we all lose our balance. So it's cool that both of these studies showed significant improvements in balance and strength.
Yeah, which
Virtual
is
reality.
super excited for both of us. I feel like the first couple of studies that we found were like pretty promising for things that we could actually use in our profession. I all of a sudden really wanted to get a hold of some virtual reality stuff that I could like use to motivate my kids, and you could use to like help your patients too.
Yeah, I just I'm gonna have to fight the technology.
So we don't love technology, but like maybe this is a good one.
Yeah, it has its uses for sure.
For sure.
I get overwhelmed with the computer at work.
Yeah, I feel you. We also found some studies on simulating the effects of being in nature. So if you have been a longtime listener of this podcast, you know that we did an episode on nature and the benefits of nature. What we didn't talk about, I don't think, was what if you don't have ready access to nature? Like, what if you're in a hospital, or what if, I don't know where else you would be without being able to go access nature easily. Maybe it's too cold outside, or maybe, I don't know.
Maybe you live in New York City.
True.
And I guess
I can't even imagine that, because I've just always had access to nature.
Right. Like, I guess Central Park gives you some, but it's not the same as getting out in the woods. So
right.
You have to drive, several hours, and you might not even have a car because you live in a city that has great public transportation. So yeah, these are really cool.
So this is really cool because for people who don't have access to nature, there's now virtual reality for that. So there was a study of healthy undergraduate students that looked at the effects of 6 minutes of outdoor nature exposure compared to 6 minutes of exposure to a 360-degree virtual reality nature video, which was recorded at the outdoor nature exposure location. If that all makes sense. It's the same exact place that both people are getting. Somebody is physically there, and then the other person is seeing the virtual reality of that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So results showed that both types of nature exposure increased physiological arousal, benefits positive mood levels, and are restorative compared to an indoor setting without nature. It did say, however, for outdoor exposure, positive mood levels increase, and for virtual nature, they stay the same. So overall, outdoor exposure, like being physically outdoors, does have a little bit more of a like positive benefit. But for people who don't have access to that, virtual reality provides a lot of the same benefits. So consider using some virtual reality to get some of those awesome benefits.
Yes, and if you're not aware of the benefits of nature in general and how amazing it is to expose yourself and be in nature, I think it's episode 8. I'll link to it in the show notes.
Oh, good memory. I don't remember what episode it is.
I cheated when I looked it up earlier.
Oh.
But, when we were preparing for this, I looked it up because I thought we might have talked about this, but apparently we decided not to talk about the virtual reality. So yeah, I think it's episode 8, and I'll link to it in the show notes. Check that out if you're interested. Nature, it's extraordinary what benefits it has on our physical and mental health.
Nature's amazing.
Yeah, so we're not going to go very in depth into virtual reality and obesity, but there was a 2020 systematic review that determined that virtual reality can be an effective way to increase weight loss. It sounded like most of the studies that they looked at 47 studies, most of them that they were looking at were using the virtual reality for accountability and tracking.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So we might do, I don't know, we might do an episode on that.
Yeah.
If people are interested, but and look at it more in depth and see kind of what works and what doesn't. But they found significant decreases in weight
Wow.
with the aid of virtual reality. So
So
it can
cool.
pretty much work on everything.
That's so cool.
It is cool. So another one looked at, or several studies have looked at virtual reality and chronic pain. So chronic pain is very serious, it's very costly economically, also to the healthcare system, but economically and broad because you lose a lot of days of work. And it's just not fun to be in pain. So they had 30 participants with a variety of chronic pain disorders, including neuropathy, back pain, hip pain, neck pain, abdominal pain. The pain onsets were from 1 to 43 years ago. So basically, these people have been dealing with pain for
a long time.
1 year up to 43 years, which is way longer than I can imagine dealing with chronic
Oh my
pain.
gosh, no kidding.
Yeah. So the average was 16 years of pain. So in this study, they used virtual reality for pain management, and they found that the average pre-session pain ratings were 5.7. During the virtual reality training, it was 2.6, and after the training, it was 4.1. So it significantly decreased pain. During the treatment, they found a 60% decrease in pain overall. And 10% of the participants said that they had no pain during the treatment. So whether it was just,
holy cow,
if you've ever been in pain, if you get really, really busy, a lot of times it kind of covers up the pain. Like your mind just can't focus on too many things. So maybe it was just that good of a distraction, whatever virtual reality they were using. But for 10% of the participants, they had zero pain during the sessions.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Another really cool one that could have a huge impact in health and healthcare.
No kidding. Really awesome.
So Lauryn, I know that you have struggled with sleeping, and we haven't talked about it much because you were a little embarrassed, I think, at times to talk about your problems. And you have found some virtual reality, and I know there's some other studies, and let's hear about your experiences and what studies we have for sleeping.
Yeah, so I actually, in my research when you don't sleep, and when you have, the other part of this was I had some kind of out of control anxiety that was playing into my sleep challenges. And so when you're struggling with those things, you kind of just want to try anything to make it go away. I needed sleep. So while I was researching sleep aids, anything that had to do with how to fall asleep better, I randomly stumbled across this virtual reality beta testing product called Flowly, and it was actually advertised as working on people who have sleep problems, people who have anxiety, and people who have chronic pain. And I was like, hey, I have two out of the three of those. What the heck is this? I'm going to look more into it. So it is currently in beta testing, and I am participating in the beta testing. So there's not research on it. I am part of the research. So basically I was like, sign me up. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm willing to try anything. So I got the virtual reality thing. The coolest part is I thought it was going to be expensive and challenging. I had no idea how it worked. It literally is on my phone, and then I just have a little headset to put it in, which is awesome. It was so easy to get. And so it's this app that basically their app walks you through. It's almost like a guided meditation, but it involves biofeedback. So that's the biggest part that piqued my interest, is it monitors my heart rate. and it monitors and it guides me through like structured paced breathing. Yeah. So
How
like
does it monitor your heart rate? Sorry to interrupt you.
it has some kind of like device that I wear that monitors my heart
Okay.
rate. Yeah.
So you have like a chest strap or something?
Yeah, it goes
Okay.
over my heart.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that gets basically like filtered into the virtual reality. The virtual reality itself is like different, really like nature environments that are very soothing and calming. My favorite one right now is like an ocean at night with constellations and northern lights. So it guides you through paced breathing where it's nice, like really slow breathing. And then it overlaps that like chart with your heart rate. So your goal is to match your heart rate with your breathing. And that's like the biofeedback, that kind of like you're trying to figure out how to control your heart rate through your breathing, which is so hard. It is so hard for me. It is like almost frustratingly hard.
So it's
But
combining meditation with virtual reality
yeah,
to help you
yeah,
sleep. Oh, that's
right.
cool.
Yeah. And so, like, as you get better with it, like the northern lights glow brighter, or like the stars glow brighter. So it's like all of this kind of like your whole world is kind of this feedback to like how
So
you're doing.
it's also kind of also putting nature in there too.
It
So you're
is.
like using several
Yeah. It's
several
combining
mechanisms. Yeah.
it's combining a lot of different things, which is really, really interesting. My favorite part is definitely like the biofeedback aspect of it. I just like, because I don't understand it. I've started to feel a lot more in touch with like when my heart is racing, I notice it now. And I start to figure out how to, like, outside of the virtual reality world, I can start like, oh, I know how to like pace my breathing. Like I can get back into this like calmer state. But anyway, so I've been doing this for probably a month. Like it's pretty new still to me. And I'm still like, it's hard. But I've noticed, and I've told Travis, within the last like 2 weeks, every time I do this, I fall asleep on the couch, like probably 30 minutes after. And I'm like doing it at night, obviously, but I legit, and I don't think I have ever fallen asleep on a couch, like
Are
ever.
you pairing this with like tracking your sleep, like with your watch or something?
I don't track, I don't know, because my watch doesn't really work that well for that.
Because you have to charge it every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I
So,
got a different watch.
right. Yeah. That it would be really interesting to pair it with.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would be interesting to pair it with a sleep tracker and just see what that says. Um, so you can see like, are you doing this every night?
Not every night, no. But like,
Perfect.
yeah.
That would be what would be really interesting is like if your sleep tracker is saying, okay, you slept soundly for 7 hours and 39 minutes on
Mm-hmm.
these nights, and you're tracking which days you used it, and then you slept for 6 hours and 39 minutes on the days you
Right.
didn't do it. And then you're like, why didn't I do it?
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like the whole point. The whole point that I'm not doing it every day is because I'm trying to figure out like how much I am a skeptic going into this. Like 100%, I did not buy into this. I was like, but I'm willing to try anything.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I haven't been using it every day because I want to know that it works. Like I want it to prove itself to me and not me just be like, oh, this is working. I trust it. Like,
You should get a sleep tracker. That way you can put like numbers to it.
yeah. Yeah. The like one subjective thing that I have is like my ability to fall asleep. I can fall asleep so quickly after I like on the days that I do this. Whereas like normally it takes me probably over an hour to fall asleep. If I do slowly, I haven't even gone to bed yet and I fall asleep.
Well,
Like,
that puts us into one of the studies we got. So there's a study on a sleep assistant that uses virtual reality called Napwell that they looked at how could this thing be used to decrease sleep onset latency, which is your hour to fall asleep. Can we knock that down to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever? If you're knocking it down to 45 minutes, that's 25% improvement. That's
yeah.
awesome. and they compared different sleep conditions, no devices with a sleeping mask, no device or with a sleeping mask, or with the VR environment of the study with this Napwell. And they found that the VR was able to significantly decrease sleep onset latency, which is exactly what you are saying is the number one benefit you've seen on the nights that you're using it.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
It's huge. Like, I don't know that I can explain to people how like incredible of a result that is for somebody who like has such a hard time falling asleep. Like, I told my coworker one morning, I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't text you back. I fell asleep on the couch. And she looked at me and was like, I don't think you have ever said that in your life. And I was like, I haven't. And I'm so excited that you know that that's a big deal. But yeah, I mean, I definitely need to get a sleep tracker because then
you definitely need to get a sleep tracker because that feeds into the other studies.
Yeah.
Because then you can know about your sleep quality.
Exactly.
Which is what our other study tested out.
Yeah. So the other study looked at the effect of virtual reality meditation on sleep quality of intensive care unit patients. So they had a randomized control trial that included 48 cardiac intensive care unit patients in a hospital in Korea, and they were randomly put into either the experimental or control group. For the experimental group, meditation was provided for 30 minutes using a VR set on the evening of admission day. The experimental group reported significantly higher subjective sleep quality than the control group at the end of the study. An activity tracker assessment indicated that total sleep time and light sleep time did not differ between the groups. However, the awake time was shorter, deep sleep time was longer, and sleep efficiency was significantly higher in the experimental group than in the control group.
Which is all good for the next day.
Yeah, I'm like, I could cry with like some of these results.
I can honestly tell you that you could not get me to do a 30-minute meditation before falling asleep. Because there's no way. I'm out. God, I don't.
Yeah, 30 minutes is a long time. Mine are typically like 8 to 12.
I am very lucky on the sleep front. It is very rare that I am awake for more than 5 minutes after my head hits the pillow. And 5 minutes is probably pushing it if I'm actually trying to go to sleep. It's probably more like 2.
That's amazing.
I roll onto my side, I close my eyes, and I'm done.
That is so amazing. Yeah. And I will say, like, to touch on the anxiety piece, because that's the other part of why I got it, is because I struggle with some anxiety. Using VR is really hard when you have anxiety. I like need to know what my surroundings are at absolutely all times. So getting myself to put myself out of the physical world when I'm so anxious about it is probably my biggest barrier. The thing that I've been the most impressed by is how well it decreases my anxiety once I'm in it. And like, I think that's all the biofeedback is because I'm like watching my heart rate and doing the breathing. And like, I never thought in a million years I would be actually focused on the virtual reality and not paranoid about my surroundings. And I am actually really focused, like to the point where I've become successful with it, which I never in a million years expected, like I said. So definitely have seen some improvement with anxiety as well.
Well, I think that the virtual reality just in general has so many potential benefits that we're learning more and more about it. And here's one of the great things about it is it's a really small barrier to entry. So for those of you that are looking at this and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to be like $500. No, these things are like 20 to 60 bucks. You put your phone in it and you can get it at Amazon or Walmart. 20 bucks is like the cheapest you can get in, and 60 bucks is the most expensive. But I would say that for anybody that's struggling to sleep, that's struggling with depression, anxiety, pain, all of that, it seems like a really, really easy way to try and help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that you are having huge benefits,
Yeah.
I think is promising as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to keep y'all updated with my experience as I keep going through with it. And keep
Let us know what your
this.
next study that you're getting into is.
Yeah.
Lauryn, great job today.
Thanks, Travis. You too. This was a great topic.
This was fun. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week with another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. Please leave us a review if you have not yet.
Well, thanks, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.